best.
Well, speaking of echo chamber, let's dive into our next topic
Sure.
in this regard, because there was one issue in which it was not an echo chamber, and that is that the summit communique seems to have taken a big step down on the topic of Ukraine and the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So the last summit very much denounced Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That wasn't the case here. And looking at their official communique. And so there was a very big shift between the countries that sort of support Russia and China and the countries that don't. And even though French President Emmanuel Macron came out and denounced it and said this G20 confirms once again the isolation of Russia, today an overwhelming majority of G20 members condemn the war in Ukraine, its impact. That may be what he said, but that's not what the communique says. Would you like to take a look at the communique?
Sure.
So the communique's language was very, very watered down. So let's take a look at it. All right, let me add it. All right, so let's take a look at this specific language. Concerning the war in Ukraine. Let's see if I can make it bigger. That's too big. While recalling the discussion in Bali, we reiterated our national positions and resolutions adopted at the UN Security Council and the UN General Assembly, and underscore that all states must act in a manner consistent with the purposes and principles of the UN Charter in its entirety. Okay. In line with the UN Charter, all states must refrain from the threat or use of force to seek territorial acquisition against territorial integrity and sovereignty or political independence of any state. Okay, this one is big and important, and I very much hope that it gets actually listened to. The use or threat of use of nuclear weapons is inadmissible. So I do hope that agreement really holds.
Yeah.
Reaffirming that the G20 is the premier forum. Okay, so let's see. We highlight the human suffering and negative added impacts of the war in Ukraine with regards to the global food and energy security supply chains, macro financial stability, inflation, and growth. And that is not the reason we have inflation. I'm just going to point that out, which has complicated the policy environment for countries, especially developing and at least developed countries, which are still recovering from the pandemic, and the economic disruption, which has derailed progress towards SDGs. Okay, that's big because that's very different. And I want to point out that if the same countries had the same standings as they did last year, I don't think this would have changed in this way. So, David, what is your take on why the narrative has shifted so substantially and coming out of the G20?
Well, it's simple. It's because Russia threatened not to support the communique beforehand. Straightforward.
Yeah.
And India understood that Russia will stand its ground because a communique, if it's not approved by everybody, then it won't move forward.
Yeah.
So they had to water down the language of it. And even though the US was trying to pressure that because that's what the forum is used for, half of those members are US allies.
Yeah.
So that's why G20, G7, it's all becoming nothing but because of Russia has threatened not to support the final communique. So because that will be a massive failure for India as a host. I remember India is all about nothing that shines is gold. Remember that. So this is where the problem, I think, for India is more about the surface rather than the substance of things.
So let me share this picture of Modi. Can you see it, David?
Yeah, not yet.
Let me add it. Okay, so let me share this picture of Modi. So this is from Outlook Business and Money, but I mean this is them signing it, right? So here, who do we have? And I specifically want to point out this hand shake situation going on
Yeah.
here. So, this is a very interesting image. Now, I would like to highlight another image. Now, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and
That's
it's
true.
not a video, but look at this image. Who is this? This is Modi and Lavrov.
Well, it's because Modi wants to make sure to stay on the good graces of Lavrov, because Lavrov could have object to the final communique. So
Absolutely.
that's
But if we're looking at what's going on behind the scenes, because this is a behind the scenes candid photo, and the other one is a posed photo. So I'm just putting this out there. I think that it is a very interesting difference that is
to think about.
to something to think about. This is food for thought.
It's true.